Joining us now, Congressman, 1st Congressional District Republican, Dr. Rob Wittman. He's also the chairman of the Subcommittee on Military Readiness, and he's also a candidate for governor of Virginia on the Republican side, obviously, in 2017. You just heard from Frank Wagner. He's running for governor. We heard from Pete Snyder yesterday. He decided to not run for governor and back Gillespie. And Corey Stewart also will be in that race. It'll be decided in a June 2017 primary, open primary, by the way. Anybody can vote in it. And just so you know the rules, it's a plurality, not a majority. No runoff, don't need 50%. So basically, 4 candidates in, somebody technically could win with 25.1%. Technically. I don't think that's going to happen, but that could happen if it was split up 4 ways. Now, after that, as Bobby Scott would say, do the arithmetic analysis. We got Congressman Wittman joining us. Dr. Wittman, good to have you with us.
John, it's great to be with you this morning.
Okay, you guys overrode, we had lots to talk about today. You overrode President Obama's veto of your allowing people to sue the Saudis bill. What happens now? I mean, this is the first time you've ever overridden one of the president's vetoes. I was kind of shocked at that. I figured somebody would pull the strings out or bail or, the normal things, but you blew them out of the water.
Yeah, it was a pretty resounding rebuke to the president, and I think folks saw pretty clearly that we have to stand on the side of American families that were affected by these terrorists. And for the folks that said, well, this has long-term ramifications to our men and women in uniform and United States citizens that may serve in these other countries, I think doesn't look at the specifics of the bill and how narrowly crafted this is to make sure that it limits it just to this instance of those folks in Saudi Arabia that were connected with these terrorists and their horrendous acts. So, John, I think it's clearly a situation of, do you side with the American families who have been affected by this, or do you side with those that have supported terrorists? And to me, it was pretty clear what we have to do, and we sided with the American families that were so severely impacted by these acts of terror.
Well, so what happens now? I mean, if I was a family affected by 9/11, I can actually bring a lawsuit against the Saudi government. What would I be claiming?
Well, that's it. You can now bring a civil lawsuit for damages against the Saudi Arabian government, either for their connections or for lack of acting for what they knew about this particular situation. So it does allow you to stake a claim that they are liable for their actions and would be subject to potential damages through a hearing in the court here in the United States. So it does open that up, at least for the families to make claims legally against the Saudi Arabian government for their efforts with these terrorists.
Okay, let's get to Omnibus, son of Omnibus, grandson of Omnibus. We got another, catch-all spending bill. Hey, but I tell you what, you were on a couple of weeks ago, and you told our audience basically, you said Harry Reid runs the entire government. I kind of laughed at that, and now it's play. I mean, you're right. Here's Harry Reid. Think about this, right? He's a lame duck senator not running for re-election. He's in the minority. He got his clock cleaned in 2014 in more ways than one. He lost every competitive race, right? He got wiped out. And Harry Reid, who's only going to be there for, 8 more weeks, is still running the entire government. How does this work?
I tell you, John, it's unbelievable how the pieces of this have come together. And if you were to dream of a way not to properly make decisions and do the appropriations for a United States government, this would be the way to do it. Last minute, all kinds of moving pieces. This amendment on Flint, and listen, I am deeply concerned about the people of Flint, but there are a whole series of bad decisions that were made by both local and state officials, and granted the EPA didn't help the situation, but there are a number of those situations, and I've heard from a number of folks in Virginia who have suffered through the same type of situations where through a series of poor decision makings, localities are in serious shape as far as public infrastructure. And it's precedent setting now to say, well, now the federal government's going to come in and bail those localities out. And as I said, this doesn't in any way, shape, or form reflect how I feel about the people of Flint, but it does, I think, address the situation about what we can do as a federal government, especially when we continue to rack up debt deficit. And that was the central piece in this. There was they took it and put it into another bill to try to address that particular situation, and then through again, last minute negotiations, come up with a CR that, while it did have a good element in there in funding veterans and military construction, it didn't fully fund the military. So now we have a short-term stopgap funding measure there, and again, it kicks the can down the road. It does everything that you would not want to do in making spending decisions. So it's status quo. You spend at the same levels. It pretty much locks government down, so you can't start anything new. You can't change direction. You can't make adjustments as we need to get this government working the way it needs to. So, and here we are. And think about this, John. We're going to be back now on with the deadline of December the 9th. We come back to Washington on November the 14th. Again, another one of my big issues is all this time away from Washington. Now we come back on November the 14th. Then December the 9th, this short-term continuing resolution runs out. And I don't see a clear path forward. We need to be able to direct more dollars to our military. The readiness that the lack of readiness that we're suffering through right now is almost incomprehensible. And the other side is saying, hey, we're not going to agree to any additional military spending unless you increase spending elsewhere. And we have budget caps in place from the sequester. So it's two forces that meet each other where there's not a place to move. I just am puzzled as to what happens when we get back.
Well, I mean, another continuing resolution, CR, so the government gets funded, nothing cut, nothing changed. Harry Reid gets whatever he wants. Pelosi gets whatever she wants because nobody wants to see the government shut down. And then Paul Ryan, your leader, claims victory. It's like they live in an alternative universe. Dr. Wittman, what are the good things about your candidacy for governor? And I'll just tell you this, as long as you're serving in the House, is, you have to get out and talk to people, right? Because you're running for governor. Yes. You got to get outside of your district, right? You got to go statewide. You got to go to these events. You got to talk to people. I mean, a lot of your colleagues up there, it's if they're in a strange land. I don't know. Are they talking to their constituents?
Well, I'm assuming some of them are, John. I tell you, if they're hearing the same thing that I'm hearing as I travel across the state, there is a nearly unfathomable disconnect from Washington to the real world in the minds of the people that I talk to, and they are just beside themselves about how mad they are in Washington. And I think that's going to manifest itself in this year's elections. As I talk to folks, they are just as mad as they can be, and they want a change. They do not want the same path that we've been on with another 4 years of Hillary Clinton. So I see that, to me, as one of the big driving forces in this election, and I think it's going to impact every election across the board. The congressional races, the U.S. Senate races, especially the presidency. I tell you, folks are as distressed as I have seen them, and what we've seen just happen in Washington lends itself to that, and they're ready to say, listen, we've got to take a much different direction to really try to get this nation back.
Well, I tell you what, you basically 6 months ago predicted this whole budget thing would play out just the way it did. Unfortunately, you were a seer on this once again, but we're just getting no change in any of the behavior, and the debt continues to rise. No one says anything about that. There's no even effort to address it. And 30 days out before the government shuts down, everybody runs around with their hair on fire and says we can't let the government shut down. And, then Pelosi and Reid get whatever they want to avoid the government getting shut down. I mean, and you predicted this would happen 6 months ago, right on my show, and almost to the day. And there's no change.
Yeah,
no wonder.
It's frustrating. And John, the only way that we ever get our arms around this, I believe, is members of Congress have to be willing themselves to sacrifice if the job doesn't get done. And as I've said, no budget, no pay. If you don't get a budget done on time, you shouldn't get a paycheck. If all 12 appropriations bills aren't done by the end of July, you shouldn't be able to leave to go home in August for what is essentially a vacation. And you shouldn't get paid until members of Congress are willing to stand up and say, I am going to myself take on the accountability, the responsibility, and the impacts of a lack of decision, and that is my paycheck and my vacation. Then things will stay on track as they are, because it's easy to say, well, we do this, and we point fingers at everybody else and say, well, it's their fault, it's somebody else's fault. And that has got to stop. The issues that we face as a nation with the debt and the deficit, the direction of how we are funding and having the capability in our military to face the threats around the world continues to worsen, and nobody seems to have a sense of urgency about this. So we have got to be able to, ramp up, I believe, pressure on Congress. And what I'd look at is to say which member is really willing to make a serious effort on this. And the seriousness says, I'm willing to put my paycheck on the line, and I'm willing to put my vacation on the line.
Well, they're never going to do that, because then they'd have to be accountable like everybody else that has a real job. So that's not going to happen. I appreciate your efforts by it. But those that want to do the right thing like yourself and want change, no wonder why you're running for governor, right? Because that place has got to drive you nuts. At least you're governor, you're an executive, right? You can make decisions and do the right thing. So,
well, I'm in there.
I'd run for governor if I were you too.
We need some change in Richmond.
We need something. Okay, let's get to, I just got to ask you this. I know it was on the Senate side, but you're up there. I watched the Wells Fargo chief get grilled last week. I think it was by Senator Warren, who I really lauded for that effort. I think she asked all the right questions, did the right thing, and don't care what side of the aisle you're on. If you do the right thing, you're is. A lot of the lawmakers suggesting now, Dr. Wittman, that the Wells Fargo chief should face criminal charges. I mean, you really look at what this guy did. It's very bothersome to people. And it goes back to people really thinking that if you're an average middle-class, working-class American, you're kind of cut out of the system. You're kind of screwed. I mean, he fired 5,300 people that were making, $13 an hour, $12 an hour. Meantime, this guy, Stumpf, made $200 million off the scam. He keeps the money. Nothing happens to him. 5,200 people get fired that they basically threaten their jobs over not getting 8 accounts or whatever it is. So everybody gets screwed except the guy that set it up, and he walks away with $200 million. I mean, don't you think this is part of the problem? Why middle-class working Americans feel that they're just in a corrupt, rigged system?
John, I think absolutely. And when you see this with Wells Fargo, or you are a parent or somebody that has allergies, and you see EpiPens go from a couple $100 up to $600 a piece, and you look at the CEOs of those companies, making records amounts of money. And listen, I don't begrudge anybody that works hard to enjoy the fruits of their labors. But when there seems to be, as you said, a rigging of the system, and especially with Wells Fargo, I mean, clearly in that situation, there was a purposeful attempt to inflate and pad the salaries of those in the upper echelons, and then those that are doing the work, the ones that got hammered in this. I think that is truly behind people's deep sense of frustration, and say, listen, those at the top get more, and those at the, in the middle, and they're trying to work their way up, get hammered, and that's a frustrating part of it for us. And to me too, there are a lot of places here, John, where the system has failed. Obviously, there's a responsibility with the leadership within Wells Fargo. Also, their board of directors has a responsibility, but also too, the reason we have some semblance of government oversight here with examiners both at the state and federal level is to look at this stuff and make sure that these things don't occur. So, as this unfolds, I want to understand exactly where all the breakdowns took place, and I want to make sure that we hold people accountable, both the leadership in that company, and both civilly and criminally, if we look through and see that they've broken laws, but also, what happened in the breakdown. We talk about needing all these additional regulations, and it doesn't seem that in this situation any of that has worked. And I'm very much, a a person that believes there's big problems with Dodd-Frank and too much regulation, but in this situation, what happened? And I think a lot of the Dodd-Frank elements need to be repealed. But we've had elements of bank examinations to look at what they do and how they do it for years. And I just scratch my head and go, what in the world happened here? At every point in the system, it broke down. And the hardworking folks there that are the backbone of that company, the ones that got hammered.
It just speaks to the level of frustration that people have. And that's why I'm telling you Trump is going to win this election on November 8th. I am so confident for this because I talk to average people every day, Dr. Wittman, and they're fed up. Let's go to your gubernatorial race. Pete Snyder yesterday coming out says he's not going to run. He's going to back Gillespie. Gillespie's name recognition, one poll's got him at 87% in the state. Looks like a juggernaut. Many people have said to me, hey, is Wittman going to stay in the race now? What's your response to that?
Well, John, I think our focus right now needs to be 100% on winning in 2016. That has to be it. There's no way that any of the candidates on any of the statewide races are going to have the opportunity, if they win the nomination, to win in 2017, unless we put all of our focus in 2016. And that's what my focus is right now. I am fully in running in 2016. My plans have not changed on what I've laid out there for 2017. And remember, too, there is no vacancy there. And if we all work hard, there won't be a vacancy. And that issue that people are trying to make is a non-issue. So I just urge everybody out there to cool their jets on 2017 and be looking at 2016. That's the only way that we are truly able to be successful in the long term, is to make sure we focus on what's in front of us. And I know as I talk to people traveling across the state, they do get a little perplexed because they feel like there's so much attention on this, in 2017 that, we're losing focus on what we have to get done right now, and that is to win 2016. And that's what my sole focus is today, to make sure that all of us are doing everything we can to make sure we are successful, top to bottom, on the ticket here in 2016.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's only 5 weeks out. Everybody should be absolutely focused on 2016, and I happen to agree with you. I've dismissed all of the conversations about what happens in a Senate special election because, the seat will get vacated, Tim Kaine will be vice president, because this isn't going to happen. Trump is going to win this election. Congressman, I don't think it's going to be close. I don't care what the talking head liberals say. I'm out of time, Dr. Wittman. Thank you for being with us. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I don't know how you stand it there, but keep fighting the fight, man.
We're gonna keep fighting the good fight, and thanks to all your listeners for tuning in. And please tell them to contact us. They can go to our website, www.wittman.house.gov, or to go to robwittman.com.
robwittman.com. Thanks, Congressman. Always good to have you on and your perspective. This is the John Fredericks Radio Network. I'll be right back. Stay with me.